Hi guys, welcome. It's that time again. Except this is going to be a little different here. This isn't the regular Sports and Shorts of Sorts podcast. You can catch those on my YouTube, Spotify page, but this is just a WNBA recap. I usually do the NBA WNBA recap thing, but like a good divorce lawyer, I had to split that shit up. There's just too much. If you're wanting some NBA news, keep your eye on my page. We got some stuff coming out with all the free agents, the trades, the draft. I got a big one lined up, but I had a big WNBA lined up, so I couldn't put the two together. It would be way too long. So here's pure WNBA. If you're wanting to catch up on the WNBA, hopefully this is what you need to be listening to right now to hook you up. So we'll get to the Commissioner's Cup final. It's like the NBA in season tournament, which they've had before, and I've kind of like how they've done it now, where they just, let's just bang this thing out in a few weeks, and it seemed to have been working out pretty good. And you just have two conference winners, have them meet in a final, and there you go. And that's how it's done. I kind of like it. You had the Minnesota Lynx taking on the New York Liberty. The Liberty had won the Cup last year, and we're looking to become the first multiple winner of that trophy. And it was the Liberty that got off to a hot start, taking a lead in the halftime. But in the third quarter, we saw why the Minnesota Lynx have one of the best records in the WNBA. The defensive pressure they applied to the Liberty while knocking down their own shots was just huge. The defense held the New York Liberty to 10 points in the third quarter. That swung the game, and Minnesota took over. Superstar Nafisa Collier lit it up for the Lynx, and they won the game 94-89. First ever Commissioner's Cup, the fourth team to win the trophy in its 4 years of existence. I mentioned Collier. She won the game's MVP with 21 points, 6 boards, 3 dimes, 3 steals. After the game, she was saying Bridget Carleton deserved the award. The Canadians scored 23 points with 5 dimes, 4 boards, and 3 steals. They both balled out. On the losing end, Brianna Stewart had a double-double, 24 points, 11 boards. Sabrina Ionescu a double-double of her own with 23 and 10. But how does Jonquel Jones only get 3 shot attempts in the final? Like, that astounds me. Regardless, great win for the Minnesota Lynx as they're your 2024 Commissioner's Cup champions. And just like every recap I did in the NBA throughout the season, I started in the East. So I'll do that in the WNBA one here, starting with the New York Liberty, the losers in the WNBA Commissioner's Cup final. But yeah, they had a pretty good, run to the final, except they came up a little short there. And just before I get going, remember the WNBA, the top 8 teams qualify for the playoffs, regardless of conference. So you're hearing me reference where they sit in the league standings, and that's why. And the team with the best record in the WNBA, I just mentioned the Commissioner's Cup final, were on the losing end, the 16-3 New York Liberty. They've been rolling other than that loss. They took their lengthy winning streak into Vegas to take on the Aces. And last year, in a rematch of last year's WNBA finals, and what a game that was. The Liberty jumping out to a quick lead, but the Aces coming back. And I was saying last week's episode, or not week, it's been a bit, but last episode with Jonquel Jones needing more touches in the offense, they went through her, and what a night for the 2021 MVP. She had 34 points, 8 rebounds, 4 or 5 from downtown. Her dominant play is why the Liberty held on to win 90-82 and extend their winning streak to 8 games at the time. Sabrina Ionescu didn't have her best shooting night, but she finished with 15 points, 12 dimes. Brianna Stewart sat back a little while Jonquel did her thing, finishing with a 14-point, 12 rebound double-double. Lainey Hamilton also in double figures with 12 points. And then the Liberty took their now 8-game winning streak at the time, the Phoenix, to take on the Mercury. And what a battle that was. Again, Liberty jumping out to an early lead, but Phoenix coming back. And after a huge third quarter, the Liberty were looking good going into the fourth, but that's when the Mercury turned it up and sparked a comeback. Brianna Stewart would have her layup attempt get swatted away by Brittany Griner late in that one, sparking a Mercury fast break. And when the Liberty needed their shots to go down late, they just wouldn't fall. And the Mercury snapped the Liberty's 8-game winning streak. All the Liberty starters scored at least 12 points, with Stewart leading the way with 28 points, 5 assists, 5 steals, and 4 rebounds. But another bad shooting night for Ionescu, 6 for 20. She did have 8 assists and 7 boards, and Lainey Hamilton shot 4 for 12. They only had 5 points off the bench. A good team effort by the starters, but they were just beaten by a team that played better that night. Liberty returned home to face the LA Sparks, and I mentioned it was a bad few shooting nights for Ionescu, but shooters shoot their way out of slumps, and that's what Sabrina did, going for 11 for 19 from the field, including 6 for 11 from 3, finishing with a game-high 31 points and 9 dimes. Jonquel Jones shot efficiently as well, finishing with 22 points on 9 for 14 shooting, 8 dimes, 7 boards. Brianna Stewart, 17 points, 5 boards, 5 dimes. And even with the bench, Jokic stepped in with 12 points, and the Sparks cut the Liberty's lead to 5 in the fourth quarter, but the Liberty would take away, mostly due to the fantastic shooting of Sabrina there. Liberty turned it around and avenged their third loss of the season by beating the Sparks by 13. A few days later, the Liberty would have a rematch with the Sparks, and LA came out and kind of jumped on the Liberty early, but the Liberty responded huge, outscoring the Sparks in the second quarter 33-19. The second half was pretty even with the Sparks trying to come back, but Liberty wouldn't let it get too close. Last year's MVP, Brianna Stewart, reminded us why she got that award. 33 points, 7 dimes, 6 block shots. She was doing it all out there. Sabrina Ionescu continued her great shooting stretch after being in that slump. She had 24 points, 9 dimes, 6 boards. Jonquel Jones pulled back a bit with her teammates shooting lights out, but she had a nice double-double of 14 points, 13 boards with 5 dimes. Kayla Thornton has fit in well with Lainey Hamilton missing some time. She'd miss the next game as well, dealing with a knee injury, and Thornton would finish with 20 points on the night. The bench didn't do much, but they didn't really need to as the Liberty beat the Sparks by 10. And after a few games at home, the Liberty went to Atlanta to take on the Dream. The Liberty came out on fire. The Dream had no answer, with Ionescu having another great shooting night, going for 26 points, 11 dimes. Brianna Stewart getting stats all over the sheet with 17 points, 8 boards, 6 dimes, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. Jonquel Jones, another double-double with 15 points, 11 boards, and 4 dimes. The bench even chipped in a bit on this one, outscoring the Dream's bench 29-18. After the Dream were outscored 29-18 and 33-20 in the second, the Liberty got to play more of their bench in the second half, which helped with them getting some more shots up, especially with Lainey Hamilton and Courtney Vandersloot still out. And I did talk with the Liberty coming up short in their hopes of repeating as Commissioner Cup champions, and they'd return home to take on the Dream, where they'd also have Lainey Hamilton and Vandersloot back for this one. Very up and down game, though. The Liberty came out rusty, and the Dream had a big lead, but the Liberty got back and looked into it in the second half, where the Dream would go on another run, but Brianna Stewart, who finished with 22 points and 11 rebounds, really made the difference late. And another big game for Lainey Fibic off the bench, 12 points off the pine for her with some big defensive possessions late to help the Liberty get the 81-75 win. But again, more questions about the Liberty. I thought they had just figured out how to get more touches than Jonquel Jones, but after barely getting shots up in the final, she would follow that up in the Commissioner's Cup final. She would follow that up with just 5 shot attempts in that win over the Dream. I mean, the team got the win. That's the main thing. But they got to figure a way to balance their shot attempts a little better. We'll see what happens with the Liberty today as they take on the Minnesota Lynx. A little rematch of that Commissioner's Cup final, where, like I said, the Liberty will be looking for revenge. Next up in the conference with the second best record in the league, the Connecticut Sun. The Sun sit at 15-4 on the season and went on a 4-game winning streak after picking up their lone loss of the season. And the Sun went into Dallas to take on the Wings, where the Sun dominated the game. 5 different players reached double figures, with Deanna Bonner. She wasn't one of them, only having 8 points on the night, but it didn't make a difference. Another reminder of how deep this team is. Rachel Banham leading the Sun off the bench with 16 points in 17 minutes. Alyssa Thompson hanging around a triple-double again with 13 points, 9 boards, and 9 dimes. They beat the Wings by 18 on the road. And then the Sun would return home to take on the Sparks. Much closer game than their game against the Wings, but same result. All 5 starters for the Sun scored double figures. They took down the Sparks 79-70. Again, Alyssa Thomas flirted with a double-double, 11 points, 7 boards, 7 dimes. And when this team clicks, not a lot can beat them. And they take that winning streak in the desert to take on the defending champion Las Vegas Aces. And right out of the gate, the Sun looked overmatched. The Aces jumped on them early, taking a massive 17-point lead into halftime. The Sun did try to chip away at the lead, but the Aces would not let up, and the Sun would lose by 11 in Sin City. The power duo of Duana Bonner and Alyssa Thomas, they were non-existent. Bonner shot 2 for 10 and finished with 6 points. Thomas had 6 points on 2 for 6 shooting, but did have 7 assists. Breonna Jones was the only presence inside. 18 points and 7 boards, while DeJohnny Carrington led the Suns in scoring. She really looked like Connecticut's best player in the game. But the biggest thing for the Sun, they had no answer for Asia Wilson, but to be fair, not a lot of teams do. Connecticut would continue their road trip heading to the Northwest to take on the Storm, and the Sun had a very low scoring first quarter, but from that point on, it was all Seattle. The Storm would hand Connecticut their largest defeat of the season. They had no answer for the Storm on the defensive end, and the Sun again had trouble scoring. 3 starters did finish in double figures, with Breonna Jones sharing the team lead with 14. Alyssa Thomas also had 14 points, 14 boards, 3 assists, but 6 turnovers. Yikes. Duana Bonner again couldn't find her stroke, finishing with 9 points on 4 for 13 shooting, including 1 for 6 from downtown. But she did grab 9 boards in the defeat. Tyasha Harris did chip in 10 points, but the Sun lacked offensive punch. They had shot 37% from the field, 14 from three-point line, and it's the first time the Suns had lost 2 games in a row since last year's Eastern Final, where the Liberty beat the Sun in 3 straight to advance to the WNBA Finals. And Connecticut went to Washington, D.C. to take on the Mystics and avoid a potential 3rd loss in a row. Sun came out cold and found themselves in a huge deficit before going to the second quarter, where the Sun turned it around as Duana Bonner seemed to be busting out of her slump. And Connecticut still trailed going into halftime, but they chipped away at the lead. In the second half, the game went back and forth, looking like it could go either way. Carrington made a clutch bucket late to tie things up, and the game would go to overtime. But in the extra period, the Sun took over and were able to hold on. I mentioned Bonner shooting much better in this game. She finished with a team-high 24 points and 10 rebounds, a solid double-double for her. 2 other Sun players went over 20. Tyasha Harris was huge on both ends of the floor, finishing with 23 points while grabbing 4 steals. I mentioned Carrington's clutch bucket. She finished with 22 points and, like always, played great defense. Alyssa Thomas had a quieter game scoring with only 7 points, but did grab 8 boards and 6 dimes. And the Connecticut Sun did just enough to avoid that 3-game losing streak. But just the very next night, they'd return home to host the Atlanta Dream, and again, the Sun were sluggish to start. I mean, they did just play overtime on the road the night prior, but despite that, the Sun had a 2-point lead going into halftime, and the game stayed close throughout the second half, where the Dream were just hitting their shots down the stretch, while the Sun weren't. Duana Bonner led the team in scoring with 17, but again, a rough shooting night, 4 for 14. DeJohnny Carrington, again, for 15 points. It was good for her. Alyssa Thomas, double figures, 14. Hung around a triple-double again, 8 dimes, 7 boards. But again, 6 turnovers for her. Got to cut those turnovers down. And they were costly in a 4-point loss. 3rd loss in 4 games for the Sun. And things didn't look any easier for the Sun as they went on the road to take on the Phoenix Mercury. And it was a pretty even game with the Sun getting hot and going on a run in the 3rd quarter to expand their lead. But in the 4th, the shorthanded Mercury would go on a run to make things close. But late in the game, Breonna Jones scored a team-high 18 points and grabbed 7 boards and made big shots late. Carrington, she made some big shots, 16 boards. There's 16 points, 8 boards. Alyssa Thomas, almost a triple-double again, finishing with a double-double. 10 points, 12 boards, 6 dimes. Just a much better scoring spread out throughout the Sun. You had big points off the bench with Tiffany Mitchell and Veronica Burton scoring well. But Duana Bonner, man, 3 for 12, 1 for 8 from 3. I think if this team needs to be successful going forward, Bonner's going to have to shoot much better. But regardless, the Sun lead with a big win, and their next game is Thursday, July 4th against the Minnesota Lynx. The Atlanta Dream, they sit 3rd in the East with the 7th best record in the WNBA, sitting at 7-10 on the season. They hosted the Sparks in a back-and-forth game where the Sparks went on a big run in the 3rd quarter to make it tight. But the great play of Alicia Gray down the stretch was massive. She scored a game-high 25 for Atlanta. But again, had to shut out 2012 MVP Tina Charles. What a resurgence she has this season. 20 points, 11 rebounds, another double-double for her. The Dream beat the Sparks 87-74. Excuse me, and it was another rough shooting night for Ryan Howard, who shot 4 for 15, but she finished with 16 points and 5 dimes. Ariel Powers, she played great, 13 points, 6 boards off the bench. The Dream would then go on the road to Minnesota, where the Dream became a bit of a nightmare. I mentioned the tough shooting at the start of the season for All-Star Ryan Howard, and she was off a bad start in this one, shooting-wise, just hitting 1 of 9 shots. But the biggest play was when she was driving to the hoop and stood on Minnesota guard Courtney Williams' foot, injuring her ankle to the point where she would leave the game and not return. She was getting reevaluated, but a huge blow to the Dream and a huge blow to Team USA's 3x3 Olympic basketball team. She was a part of that team that was looking to repeat its gold medalists, and with a whole new team, this is the second injury to the team in that 1 week period. I'll get more to that other injury later, but you have to feel for Howard, who might miss out on the Paris Summer Olympics here. Hopefully it's not that serious, but with her out of the game, the Dream fell apart, and they scored only 8 points in the fourth quarter, shooting 17% from the three-point line and 29% from the field altogether. Alicia Gray, 1 for 16 from the field, 0 for 8 from downtown. Tina Charles led the way for the Dream with 14 points and 10 boards, another double-double for her, but a tough 13-point loss for Atlanta, who lost more than just the game with Ryan Howard going out. Tough. I hate to see injuries. The Dream returned home to host the Indiana Fever. As just mentioned, the Dream would be without Ryan Howard, and Tina Charles' year of resurgence continued in the game, where she had 24 points, 7 boards, plus her play against Indiana's Aaliyah Boston put Boston in foul trouble. And even with Gray scoring 19 points and Haley Jones scoring 12 points, it wasn't enough. The Fever jumped on the Dream early, and despite Charles' great game, there was not enough firepower as the Fever would hold on to win and give the Dream another loss, their second in a row. And Atlanta then hosted the Liberty, as mentioned earlier, and it was in New York. And again, Atlanta would put themselves in a huge deficit to start the game, and this hole was just too big to get out of. Tina Charles, again, leading the team in scoring with 19 points and 7 boards, and the only other player to reach double figures was Cheyenne Parker-Tias. He scored 10 points, but did it on 5 of 13 shooting. The Liberty dominated the Dream, beating them 96-75. Dream again shot poorly, 38% from the field, 16% from threes. Tough to get wins when you're shooting that bad, and the Dream's losing streak continued. The silver lining was the debut of Jordan Canada, who had missed the start of the season with injury. Great to see her back on the floor. Atlanta would go on the road to take on the Connecticut Sun, who were coming off an overtime win the night before in Washington, as I had mentioned earlier. And this game was a little sluggish with the Dream taking over late. Alicia Gray was clutch in this one, hitting tough shots, tough fadeaways that really demoralized Connecticut's defense. Parker-Tias was clutch as well, only 15 minutes, but in those minutes she did well, especially in the fourth where she hit some tough shots. The return of Jordan Canada, who returned in that loss against the Liberty, was big in this win, 9 points, 6 dimes, 3 steals off the bench. The Dream continued their road trip into New York for another bout with the Liberty, who were coming off their loss in the Commissioner's Cup final, and the Dream jumped on them early. As I mentioned, the Liberty battled back and took the game late. Alicia Gray, balled out for the Dream. 24 points, dishing out 5 dimes. She did all she could, and Tina Charles another double-double with 16 points, 12 boards. But it's 6 turnovers, way too high for her. Jordan Canada did get to make her first start for Atlanta, finishing with 9 points, 9 dimes, and 5 boards. And Parker-Tias played big minutes off the bench again, finishing with 12 points and 6 boards. But the Dream just could not execute late, while the Liberty did. The next game for the Atlanta Dream is today as they host the Chicago Sky. Going to the Indiana Fever, who have the 8th spot, the 8th best record in the WNBA, and would just sneak into the playoffs in that last spot. They started off, they were sitting, at 8-12. They hosted the Chicago Sky in another Caitlin Clark-Angel Reese matchup, with the game living up to the hype. The rivalry of the two rookies coming in, and plus you had the Kennedy Carter fouler earlier in the season that caused more outrage than any atrocities in the world, it seemed. And what a game, though. Clark was aggressive, but played off Aaliyah Boston a lot, which I love. You heard me spouting about that last time I talked about the WNBA, how they need to work it through Boston more, I feel. And Caitlin Clark blew by the defender, went up for a layup, got hit in the head by Angel Reese, initially called a common foul, but the replay showed Reese hit her in the head. Pretty blatant shot that was upgraded to the flagrant one, but you could see Reese didn't agree with the call. I don't know the argument. Usually when you hit people in the head, even in the NBA, they're going to upgrade it. But after the game, Angel Reese stirred the pot a bit, saying, I guess some people got a special whistle, which in some cases can be true, but you can't hit someone in the head and not expect that call to not go your way. But yeah, it was something that everyone talked about. It was talked about in the NBA Finals with Doris Burke. They made a joke about it. But down the stretch in this game, it was big plays by Aaliyah Boston as the Reese Cardoso SEC battle on the block took place. Everybody from that conference. The Fever would come out the victors in that one, with Caitlin Clark finishing with a game high 23 points, also getting 9 dimes and 6 boards in the win. A big thing for her was the 5 turnovers, which much lower than the 9 she was getting earlier in the season. I mentioned Boston. She had 19 points, 14 boards, 5 blocks, and 4 dimes in her monster game. Kelsey Mitchell had 17 points, and Alyssa Smith had 15. And 17 points off the bench for the Fever was big as well. A big win over the Sky for them. The Fever stayed at home for their next home matchup with the Washington Mystics, and this game really had me salivating at the potential the Fever could tap into. We know what the crystal ball shows of this team down the road, but right now, the way they were playing there, they could surprise the teams in the playoffs if they get there. The game was close, and down the stretch, it could went either way, but Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston rocking that pick and roll. So nice. Clark's such a great shooter. She attracts that attention, but she's such a great passer that she finds Boston, and anytime she gets it on the block, I'm putting my money on Boston getting fouled or scoring. And we've all hyped up Clark as we should, like what she's doing for the league. But like I said, Boston, she won Rookie of the Year last year. She went #1 overall in her draft class for a reason. And when she's rolling, it just opens everything up. She had 22 points, 8 boards. Kelsey Mitchell also had 22 points. And Alyssa Smith, 11 points, 7 boards. She didn't really need to demand the ball at all. Clark pulled the reins back a bit, really efficient. Still high with turnovers and 6, but she had 18 points, 12 boards, 6 dimes, 4 steals. Erica Wheeler made some clutch shots down the stretch to help secure the 88-81 Fever victory. Third in a row, fourth in 5 games, and they had one of the busiest schedules to start the season, and it looks like they found their groove a bit. The Fever's next game was in Atlanta against the Dream, and I'd mentioned Ryan Howard was out with an ankle injury, and the Fever took advantage of that early, taking a 57-41 lead in the halftime. Boston, like I said, was on fire lately, and she went up against Tina Charles, who had Boston in foul trouble. But despite only playing 26 minutes, Boston still had a double-double at 10 points, 10 boards, 3 blocks. Frontcourt teammate Alyssa Smith stepped up in a big way, 21 points, 9 boards, swatting 2 blocks. That inside presence really combined that with a constant attack from the backcourt led to this one-sided victory. Kelsey Mitchell, 18 points on 7-12 shooting. Caitlin Clark, 16 points, 7 dimes, 4 boards. But again, those turnovers, 7 turnovers, way too much. But the Fever got the 12-point win and extended their winning streak to 4 games. And the Fever took that winning streak into Chicago to take on the Sky for the 3rd time this season. And just like their other matchups, this one was hyped up, and it lived up to the hype. A back-and-forth game with both teams taking runs at each other. The Fever had a 1-point lead at halftime, and after a big third quarter, looked like the Fever were going to cruise to their 5th straight win, and their 3rd straight over the Sky. Caitlin Clark was wheeling and dealing, 17 points, while dishing out a career-high 13 dimes. She also had 6 boards and 4 steals. Kelsey Mitchell balled out, team-high 24 points, always in attack mode. Aaliyah Boston, terrific, 18 points, 7 boards, 6 dimes. But maybe the Fever got just a little too comfortable, opening up the door for the Sky to go on a huge run and make this tight at the end. The Fever had some costly turnovers and took some really bad shots. One instance off Chicago turnover, Caitlin Clark pushed the ball up to Wallace, who was looking at that hoop with a few Sky defenders in front of her. But instead of taking the ball back out, she attacked the hoop, threw up a wild layup, missed it terribly. And then one of the last offensive possessions, when the Fever really needed a hoop to stay in the game, Kelsey Mitchell attacked the hoop, which I love, but she was great attacking the hoop. She threw it out to Alyssa Smith, who was on the perimeter, and Smith had a big night against Atlanta, but she was only at 12 points in this game and was really getting outplayed by Chicago's Angel Reese. Regardless, Smith went ISO on Reese and missed badly. And I'm not trying to shit on Smith here, but after Mitchell dishes that, you got to bring it back out and look for Clark, Boston, or Mitchell. I mean, Smith's probably the 4th option on that shot, but anyway, it's missed badly, and it's the way she went there in Chicago and ended up taking the win. It was pretty wild, and they really needed to spread things out there. The turnovers, the bad shots did not help Indiana. Sky went on that late run, and they'd go on to win 88-87, ruining the Fever's winning streak there. And this game could have some playoff implications. Like I said, the Indiana Fever holding down that 8th spot. These two teams will meet up again in their last regular season matchup on August 30th. The Fever kept their road trip going to the Northwest to take on the Storm, where Asia Wilson has referred to this team as the super team, and they jumped on the Fever early. The Fever didn't really have any answers, and suddenly they were down 14 going into halftime. They did fight back with 5 players scoring in double figures, 4 of them starters. Nelissa Smith, 12 points, 9 boards. Leah Boston's double-double, 11 point, 14 boards. Kelsey Mitchell, 14. Caitlin Clark, 15.7 dimes and 6 boards with, again, 6 turnovers. Erica Wheeler off the bench with 15. Christy Wallace really struggled, 0 points. She did not really do it on either end of the floor in the starting lineup for the Fever. And then the Fever went in the Phoenix for their 4th consecutive road game. It was a highly anticipated game, as it was the first meeting of number 1 overall pick Caitlin Clark and basketball legend Diana Taurasi. The home team Mercury jumped out on a massive lead as Indiana struggled to even register their first points. When Indiana had some go down, they started to feel it a bit, but Mercury would go on a big run again to extend their lead. But in the third quarter, Caitlin Clark would spark a run with a great fast break throw-ahead pass and a wild logo 3. Phoenix answered again, and things were getting tight going into the fourth, and the Mercury would go on another run, look to have things wrapped up, and Indiana did not give up. Kelsey Mitchell hit some clutch mid-range jumpers to lead Indiana on another comeback, and they'd secure the 88-82 win. Again, 4 starters reached double figures, 2 of them double-doubles. Nelitha Smith with 12 points, 15 boards. Caitlin Clark just missing out on a triple-double with 15 points, 12 dimes, 9 boards. Again, 6 turnovers, a little high for her. But she was electrifying in this game, and she rewarded her teammates when they ran the floor. Leah Boston, 17 points and 8 boards, 4 dimes. Double-digit performer off the bench was Timi Fagbini. She chipped in with 10 points off the pine. Fever wrap up their 5-game road trip today, July 2nd, in Las Vegas against the Aces, where it said the Aces had to move to a bigger arena to accommodate all the tickets sold for this game. You gotta love that. And then let's go to the Chicago Sky. I mentioned them a few times in the Fever there. They have the 9th best record in the WNBA at 6-11. They went on the road to take the Mystics, where Washington caught the Sky off guard and outscored them 24-10 in the first quarter. And that punch in the mouth really woke the Sky up, where they'd battle back to get into the game, making big shots down the stretch to make things interesting. Marina Mabry didn't take a lot of shots, and she would go to the line with the Sky down 83-81, attempting her first free throws of the game. She'd missed the first, intentionally missed the second, but with so little time, they really couldn't do anything, and it'd be a tough one as the Mystics would win the game there. Another double-double for Angel Reese, 10 points, 14 boards. She and fellow rookie Camilla Cardoso both put pressure on the Mystics' bigs, causing Edwards and Dawson to foul out. And Kennedy Carter led the Sky in scoring, but like I said, the Mystics would take the win. The Sky then went on the road to take on the Fever, as I just talked about, where Angel Reese got called for that flagrant one for hitting Caitlin Clark's head. And I mentioned how great of a game was, and it was outside of that one play that we all need to talk about. Reese balled out, getting another double-double, 11 points, 13 boards, 5 dimes, 2 steals. Marina Mabry made up for those missed free throws at the end of the game prior, finishing with a team-high 22 points, dishing out 4 dimes with 1 turnover. Glad to see her bounce back. Kennedy Carter got the start in this one, finished with 18 points and 4 dimes. She really adds some toughness to the lineup, and she can hoop. Glad to see her in the starting lineup there. The Sky returned home to host the injury-riddled Dallas Wings, where the Sky jumped out in an early lead, dominating both sides of the ball. Huge performance from the Sky backcourt. Marina Mabry, another good shooting night, 19 points, 4 dimes. The play of Kennedy Carter, man, she's done really well. Like I said, working her way into that starting lineup. So feisty on defense. She tied Mabry with a team-high 19 points and did it on 8 of 10 shooting. And we can't forget Angel Reese. She had a huge game, 16 points, 18 rebounds, her 7th straight double-double at the time, which is a WNBA rookie record, and she's been a phenomenal rebounder, like I said, especially on the offensive end, where she's already become one of, if not the best offensive rebounder in the WNBA. But that's just what she does. She kills it on the glass, and it was a big 83-72 win for the Sky as they snapped their 4-game losing streak. Then the Sky had a few days off for hosting the Indiana Fever for the second time, which I also alluded to earlier, where this was another great game. And I mentioned Aaliyah Boston going up against some tough SEC rookies, and those SEC rookies, Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso, played pretty well. So, Angel Reese sparked a run with her play on both sides of the ball, and her and one finishes really got the crowd. More importantly, her teammates going. Her back and forth chat with Melissa Smith is awesome. It's what basketball is all about. So I was a little bummed to see a double technical assessed, but I mean, they do that in the NBA. They're trying to just kill the trash talk, I guess. But man, Reese down the stretch, she scored a career high 25 points, 16 rebounds to extend her rookie record for consecutive doubles to 8, and became the first rookie since Asia Wilson to record 25 points and 16 rebounds in a game. Not only are numbers historic for a rookie, but she's entered the chat with her consecutive double-double streak of two greats, Sylvia Fowles and Candace Parker, as she chases down their record. And like I mentioned, Cardoso, she had a double-double, 16 points, 10 rebounds. Scary for that front court going forward with the talent they have. Mabry, after a few nice shooting nights, dropped back into a slump, going for 2 for 14, 1 for 10 for 3, and even missed the clutch that free throws down the stretch that opened the door for the Fever. But Kennedy Carter balled out, scoring 23 points, 5 dimes. Her intensity on both sides of the ball really set the tone for the Sky, and she's played her way into the starting lineup and not letting go of it. So I love what she's doing in the lineup there, and we'll see how long that Angel Reese double-double streak goes. You could see her hugging legend Cheryl Swoops after the game, and she mentioned how much the Icons meant in her career thus far. Sky continued their homestand when they hosted the Vegas Aces, everyone looking at Asia Wilson going up against the front court of those SEC rookies of the Sky. The Chicago got off to a great start, taking a lead into the second quarter, but the defending champions woke up and they'd start to force their will on the game. Anytime Chicago looked like they were coming back, the Aces would nip that in the bud. The Aces handed the Sky a 95-83 loss. The Sky backcourt played pretty well. Marina Mabry, 20 points, 6 boards, 4 dimes. Kennedy Carter, 20 points, 5 boards, 4 dimes, 3 steals, but she did foul out. Cardoso struggled in this one, 5 points and 8 rebounds, but Angel Reese keeping that double-double streak going at 9 with 18 points and 11 boards. And Chicago would wrap up their 4th straight game at home, taking on the Minnesota Lynx, where Chicago again would start the game well, taking an 8-point lead on the Lynx into the second quarter, and this game was back and forth. But then the Lynx would start to crank it up on both ends, outscoring the Sky 18-5 in the fourth quarter. That one-sided quarter really turned the game, and Chicago would lose their second in a row, losing 70-62 to the Lynx. Kennedy Carter led the Sky in scoring with 15 points. Lindsey Allen had a well-rounded game, 13 points, 7 dimes, 6 boards. Cardoso again didn't shoot well, 3 points on 1 for 9 shooting, although she did grab 10 boards. And it was a close one for Angela Reese, but her late free throws put her in the double-digit scoring, and she finished with 10 points, 16 boards, her 10th consecutive double-double, which is a new single-season record in the WNBA. As I mentioned, Candace Parker, she has the record of 12, but that went across 2 seasons. So right now, Angel Reese has the single-season record with 10 consecutive double-doubles. She'll look to try to extend that today as the Sky face off with the Atlanta Dream. Wrap up the Eastern Conference, go to the basement of the conference with the Mystics with the 11th best record in the league, sitting at 4-15. They hosted the Skies, I had just mentioned. Mystics were playing without Brittany Sykes, who had just returned to the lineup and picked up another injury after helping the Mystics pick up their first win of the season. Ariel Atkins, though, did what she's done all season, balled out for 29 points, 9 on 13 shooting. Canadian rookie out of UConn, Aaliyah Edwards, 16 points, 9 boards, 3 blocks, and playing against that tough Sky front court. Carly Samuelson hit some clutch shots, and it was a big win for the Mystics as they rode that wave of a hot start to an 83-81 win, which was just their second of the year. The Mystics then went on the road to take on the Fever, a game I also mentioned earlier where Boston dominated, and Aaliyah Edwards tried to play against her but was really outmatched, where she only put up 4 points and 4 rebounds in her worst game as a pro. Ariel Atkins balled out again, 27 points in Brittany Sykes' absence. The Mystics fought hard to stay in this one, but they're just missing that punch from Brittany Sykes, and there are talks that she may be out a few more weeks, but I know the Mystics are hoping to get her back soon. The Mystics were looking to rebound from their loss on the road in Indiana as they hosted the injury-riddled Dallas Wings in back-to-back games. First matchup featured the Mystics jumping on the Wings right out of the gate, never looking back. The Mystics won the first quarter and would go on to win every quarter of the game. Emily Engstler was massive for the Mystics, shooting lights out with a game-high 23 points. Jade Melbourne and also reached double figures off the bench, while starters Carly Samuelson and Stephanie Dolson reached the double-digit mark. It was a team effort as they thumped the Wings, and Mystics won 97-69. They'd quickly have their rematch there, and this one was much closer. Dallas coming out taking a 32-25 lead after the first quarter, but the Mystics took that punch and they fought back. It was a rough shooting night for Ariel Atkins. She did score 12 points on 2 for 13 shooting, but the Mystics came together and bounced back to take the win over the Wings late. 4 or 5 starters reached double figures. Stephanie Dolson leading the way with 18 points, 8 boards. Big 2-game winning streak for the Mystics, who picked up that win without Brittany Sykes or Canadian rookie Aaliyah Edwards. The Mystics hosted the Connecticut Sun in a doozy that went to overtime. I mentioned that earlier, where the Mystics were again without Aaliyah Edwards and Brittany Sykes, but they battled. Maisha Hines-Allen went toe-to-toe with Alyssa Thomas in this one. She was beasting out and letting the Sun know about it, finishing with 21 points and 7 boards. Stephanie Dolson went 4 for 7 from downtown, finishing with 18. The backcourt of Atkins and the rookie Van Loo each scored in double figures with 10 and 12 respectively. And it'd be a Mystics bench that really kept the Mystics in it. Shatori Walker-Kimbrough had 16 points, 6 boards, and 6 dimes. Jade Melbourne had 10 off the pine. The Mystics would then host defending WNBA champion Las Vegas Aces, where the Mystics jumped on the Aces to start and even took a lead in the halftime. And they were still without Brittany Sykes, but rookie Aaliyah Edwards returned and had some decent numbers off the bench, 9 points and 7 boards. Stephanie Dolson still shooting great from outside, went 5 for 6 in the game from downtown, finishing with 23. But as great as the Mystics played in the first half, their game dropped off in the second, especially the fourth quarter. The Aces outscored the Mystics 21-8, and the Mystics would fall the Aces 88-77. Hines-Allen finished with 14 points, 5 boards. Ariel Atkins, 13 points, dished out 5 dimes. The Mystics look to end their current losing streak as they go on the road to face the Los Angeles Sparks later today. That's the East, so we're going out to the West with the Minnesota Lynx, who look fantastic. Big part of it is they're healthy right now. They have the 3rd best record in the WNBA at 14-4. The Lynx hosted the Sparks, where superstar Nafisa Collier reminded us why she's one of the best in the game, finishing with 30 points, 8 steals, 6 boards, 2 blocks, a true stat stuffer. And, the Lynx needed all those points. 4 of the 5 starters all finished in double figures. It was just the usual on-fire Kayla McBride, who only finished with 7 points on 5 for 8 shooting. A tough 5-point win for the Lynx. They'd stay in Minnesota for their next game as they hosted the beat-up Dallas Wings. And even with the depleted roster, the Wings put up a good fight. The Lynx would take over the fourth and really run away with the game. Another great team win. 4 out of 5 starters in double digits. Natasha Heineman, she stepped up off the bench with 17 points and 5 dimes. Kayla McBride was leading the team in scoring with 19 points. Collier, 16 points, 7 boards. Big night for Alana Smith, too. 12 points, 9 boards, 5 steals, 3 dimes. Her confidence just seems to be at a higher level this year than last year after getting another season in her belt. The Lynx had another great game at home, this time hosting the Dream. Both teams didn't shoot particularly well. The Lynx shot 35% while the Dream shot 18%, but the Lynx made bigger shots down the stretch and walked away with a 13-point win. Nafisa Collier led the Lynx with 16 points, 8 boards, and 4 dimes. Canadian Bridget Carlton had 14, and Juhas chipped in 10 off the bench. The Lynx ended their 4-game homestand by hosting the Mercury, where the Mercury were playing some good ball coming in. But Minnesota on both sides of the ball caused fits for Phoenix. The Collier balled out again, scoring game-high 23 points, grabbing 14 boards. Alana Smith had 14. Courtney Williams had 12 points, 9 boards, 4 dimes. The bench didn't need to do much. Juhas chipped in 7 points, and the Lynx coasted to a 73-60 win over the Mercury, extending that winning streak to 6 games. Their next game was in the Commissioner's Cup final, which I talked about at the top of the show, where the Lynx would raise the trophy with Nafisa Collier winning the game's MVP. The Lynx would follow that up by going on the road to take on the struggling Wings, Dallas Wings, who were looking to end their 11-game winning streak, and they came out on fire in this one, taking a double-digit lead in the second quarter. The Lynx turned it around, and we had a close game, but down the stretch, Dallas made some winning plays, and after and a few of Minnesota's good shooters had some bad shooting nights. Kayla McBride, 11 points, 3 for 11 shooting. Excuse me. Courtney Williams, 1 for 6, and Natisha Heidemann, 2 for 6. That combination contributed to the 94-88 Dallas Wings upset, a surprising result that ended the Lynx' 7-game winning streak if you include their Commissioner Cup final win. Nafisa Collier balled out with 29 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists. Canadian Bridget Carleton scored 17, but it wasn't enough as the Lynx fell to the Wings. Minnesota would then go to Chicago to take on the Sky, as I mentioned. It was a pretty good game with the Lynx trying to come all the way back, and it wasn't until the fourth quarter when they really turned it up and outscored the Sky 18-5. Team effort with everyone chipping in. Kayla McBride made up for some bad shooting nights by getting to the free throw line, finishing with 16 points, going 8 for 8 from the line. She also had 5 boards, 5 dimes. 5 boards and 5 dimes. Collier didn't have her best shooting night, shooting 5 for 13, but did finish with 13 points, 11 boards, 6 dimes, 4 steals, and 3 blocks, really making up for it in other ways. And the Lynx got a great punch off the bench from Italian forward Zanda Lassini, who scored 8 points, but finished with a plus 16 on the plus minus. Great night for her. The Lynx have a Commissioner's Cup rematch today when they take on the New York Liberty in the Big Apple. Should be a good one. We'll leave to go to the Seattle Storm on the West Coast, where they have the 4th best record in the league at 13-6. The Storm went in the desert to take on the Mercury, and the home team jumped out on the Storm and made them play catch-up most of the game. And it was a team effort by the Storm, but they just could not come back all the way. Dineka Ogwumike led the Storm in scoring with 15 points, 11 boards. Meg McGore and Diggin Smith and Jewel Lloyd each had 14 points. Horston had 12 off the bench. But despite that balanced scoring, the Storm just fell short to the Mercury. The big difference, the three-point line. The Mercury shot 39%, while the Storm shot 19%. Yikes. Storm continued to travel through the desert for their next game, a date with the Las Vegas Aces, where the Storm had won the first matchup of the season and were looking to repeat that performance. Vegas jumped out on the visitors' get the lead and took that lead in the halftime, but the Storm battled back. They just couldn't get all the way back, falling to the Aces 94-83. Last year's leading scorer, Jewel Lloyd, finished with 1 point, going for 0 for 9 from the field. One of her worst games as a pro. Ogwumike stepped up and led the way for the Storm with 21 points, 4 boards, 4 steals. Meg McGore had a double-double, 19 points, 13 boards. Diggin Smith was the only starter to score double figures, as she had 10 and 6 dimes. Horston was a huge again off the bench with the Storm with 18 points and 6 boards. And then the Storm returned home to take on the Connecticut Sun. The first of the next 10 games at home. They won't play another road game until July 16th. Last game before the Olympic break. So lots of Northwestern coffee over the next stretch for Seattle players. They knew they'd be in a tough one with one of the best in the East. And Storm head coach Noel Quinn did make a little tinkering, moving Jordan Horston into the starting lineup and Victoria Vivens to the bench. This proved to be massive as all 5 starters scored in double figures, and the Storm overcame a dreadful first quarter to come back and win the game 72-61, ending their short 2-game losing streak and beating one of the best teams in the WNBA. Jewel Lloyd bounced back from her 1-point outing to lead the team with 16 points. And the team was really sharing the ball with everybody, all the starters getting at least 3 assists in the game. Skylar Diggins Smith leading the way with 8 assists. She also had 13 points. The Storm would then host Caitlin Clark in the traveling Indiana Fever. Right from the get-go, you could tell Seattle wanted this one. Jewel Lloyd played the "did you forget about me" attitude. She went off, scoring 34 points, 10 of 15 shooting, 6 for 9 from long range. She doesn't need to score as much with the reinforcements Seattle has brought in this year, but she likes to remind us every once in a while that she can ball out, especially after that 1-point performance she had a few nights prior. But everybody had great plus minus numbers in this one. Ineka Gwimike, she had plus 26 with finishing 15 points, 11 boards. Also throwing in 3 assists, 3 steals, 3 blocks. A real one-sided victory for the Storm. And like I said, the Storm stayed at home as they would host the Wings in back-to-back games. The first game looked close to start as it was only a 3-point game. But Jewel Lloyd would exhibit her offensive game as she attacked the hoop relentlessly, finishing with 30 points at the 16 for 17 from the free throw line. She was attacking. The Wings had no answer for her. The rest of the Storm all scored in double figures. The starters, Jordan Horston had a double-double, 12 points, 11 boards. Agumake, 16. Meg Bigor, 13. And Skylar Diggins-Smith, 11. Another one-sided victory for the Storm as they clipped the Wings, 97-76. And they had that matchup right away with the Wings again, where Lloyd again balled out, 26 points. She'd get some balanced help from the Storm, but they wouldn't even really need it. An easy 95-71 win as they beat the Wings in back-to-back games. The bench, 27-14. It was all Storm. They'll stay at home for their 5th home game and their 9-game homestand as they meet up with the Chicago Sky Friday, July 5th. The defending champion, Las Vegas Aces, have the 5th best record in the WNBA at 10-6. They hosted the New York Liberty in a rematch of last year's WNBA Finals, and as mentioned in the Liberty's portion, it was a great battle, but the Liberty were just too much for the Aces. They had another big night from Asia Wilson, 21 points, 9 boards. Kelsey Plum led the team in scoring with 22 points, and Alicia Clark and Jackie Young were the only other aces in double figures. It was an 8-point loss for the team. 8th loss of the season, equalized their entire their 6th loss of the season, equalized their entire loss from all of last season. And after a few days off, the Aces would host the Storm, as I alluded to earlier. After the Storm beat the Aces, Asia Wilson referred to them as a super team. However, Wilson and the Aces looked like kryptonite going against Seattle. Wilson, of course, balled out, 27 points, 9 boards, 4 steals, 3 dimes, 2 blocks. Jackie Young scored a game-high 32 points while grabbing 4 boards. Fellow starters Plum, 11 points, 8 dimes. Tiffany Hayes, 10 points, 5 boards. And Alicia Clark, 10 points off the bench. But probably the biggest moment for the Aces was when with someone who hasn't played in forever. I'm talking about the long-awaited return of All-Star Chelsea Gray. Her first WNBA game this year after picking up an injury in last year's finals. She only had 1 point, but dished out 7 dimes, grabbed 4 boards, and swatted 2 blocks in just 16 minutes of play. Not a bad debut. The Aces stayed at home, but had even more competition coming to town as the Aces hosted the Sun. Another game I mentioned earlier, and what more can you say about Asia Wilson? She went up against a tough front court of the Connecticut Sun and cooked them. 26 points, 16 boards, 2 steals, 2 blocks. What she does on both sides of the floor, has to have her as the front runner for MVP and Defensive Player of the Year this season. Kelsey Plum, 18. Clark again, double digits off the bench with 11. But again, Chelsea Gray, just her 2nd game back, didn't score much, just 4 points on 1 for 6 shooting. But what she does on the floor is amazing. She was a team best, plus 19. Wilson deserves all the credit she gets, but Chelsea Gray on the floor could be the difference between repeating as champions or not. I mentioned how the Aces already equalized last year's total of losses with Gray back in the lineup. I'm not expecting that to climb up too high. But like I said, it's great to see her back on the floor. The Aces would then go on the road to Chicago to face off with the Sky, as I alluded to earlier. This was a pretty good game. Closer to start before the Aces just took off. And every time the Sky tried to come back, Asia Wilson and the Aces would nip that in the bud. Wilson continuing her MVP play with 31 points, 6 boards, 3 dimes, 2 steals, 2 blocks, showing those SEC rookies that they have plenty of work to do to catch up with her. The backcourt of the Aces was dominant too. Kelsey Plum, 21 points, 5 boards, 5 dimes. Jackie Young, 22 points, and that combination led to a 95-83 win for the Aces. Chelsea Gray still finding her way in the lineup, finishing with 8 points, 6 boards, 5 dimes. I can't say how important she is to this team. Another game I mentioned earlier was the Aces going in the DC to take on the Mystics. The Aces started out a little sluggish, but made up for it quickly and won each of the remaining quarters in the game, including that 21-8 fourth quarter. Asia Wilson's shot wasn't going down as she had one of her lower scoring nights of the season, only scoring 11 points on 4 of 15 shooting. Plum also struggled from the field, scoring 2 points on 1 for 8 shooting. But their teammates stepped up. Jackie Young shot lights out, scoring 26 points. Chelsea Gray was super efficient, having her best scoring game since her comeback, scoring 22 points on 8 of 9 shooting. Tiffany Hayes was huge off the bench, finishing with 17, which equaled all of the Mystics' bench points. So even on a night Asia Wilson can't find her shot, the Aces win a game by 11. This is looking more like the defending champions. As mentioned earlier, the Aces host the Indiana Fever today in a game that required more seating for all the tickets. So hopefully it's a close one, but after Asia Wilson's tough shooting night, I expect her to go off on the Fever tonight. It could be ugly. The Phoenix Mercury have the sixth best record in the WNBA, sitting at 9-10. They hosted Seattle Super Team Storm, as I mentioned earlier. The Mercury won every quarter but the fourth. They had already built up such a lead, it didn't really matter. Kalia Cropper balled out 30 points on 11 for 20 shooting, also grabbing 6 boards on the night. Brittany Griner's really been getting into her groove since returning to the lineup. 28 points, 9 boards, swatting 2 shots. Diana Taurasi, 13 points while grabbing 8 boards and dishing out 4 dimes. Natasha Cloud only scored 3 points, but had 8 dimes and played some big defensive minutes before fouling out. And I mentioned earlier the Liberty took their 8-game winning streak in the Phoenix, and the Mercury did not care for that winning streak. And this game featured runs by both teams, and down the crunch it would come the 2 members of the USA Olympic basketball team. Brittany Griner blocked Brianna Stewart's shot late in the fourth, where soon after Diana Taurasi would knock down a big 3, followed by some more big baskets by Griner as she knocked down her free throws, and those two each had a team-high 19 points. Taurasi also had 9 rebounds and 5 dimes. Every starter for the Mercury scored in double figures. Clea Copper and Rebecca Allen each 11. Copper had 7 dimes, while Allen had 11 rebounds. And throwing Natasha Cloud double-double, 11 points. And it was a pretty big win for the Mercury as they ended the Liberty's winning streak. The Mercury would then go on the road to take on the Minnesota Lynx and looking to end their winning streak. And after a close first quarter, the Lynx started to take over this game. Phoenix struggled. Tasha Cloud led the team in scoring with 14 points and 5 dimes. Brittany Griner only shot 4 for 14 from the field as she had 10 points. Taurasi only had 7 points on 8 shots. The usually on fire Copper only finished with 9 points. It was rough. Rebecca Allen was the only other Phoenix player to reach double figures, reaching 11 points on the night. The Mercury would then host the LA Sparks, and the Sparks jumped on the Mercury to start the game. After Phoenix took their punch in the mouth, they started to turn it up. The Sparks had no answer for Kalia Copper, scored a Mercury high 24 points. The Mercury would then go on to win the other 3 quarters of the game after getting outscored in the first. Diana Taurasi went 5 for 8 from downtown on her way to a 20-point, 6 assists, 4 rebound night. Brittany Griner, another double-double, 18 points, 11 rebounds. Natasha Cloud, 14 points, 7 dimes. And after being down early, the Mercury came back to beat the Sparks 92-78. The Mercury would then host Indiana in that matchup I mentioned earlier, where it was the first meeting of Diana Taurasi and Caitlin Clark. And it was nice to see Taurasi and Brittany Griner come up to Clark and give her love before the game. That's something she's definitely not getting from a lot of other teams in the league. And the Sun jumped out on the Fever early, and it looked like they were going to run away with it, but the young Fever battled back. Brittany Griner was torching the Fever inside, finishing with 24 points, 6 boards. She probably should have got the ball more, to be honest. The trifecta of the guards for the Mercury all couldn't find their shot. Taurasi finished with 19 points, but did it on 5 for 14 shooting, including 2 for 10 from long range. Also had 5 turnovers. Natasha Cloud scored 15 points, 5 for 12 shooting with 7 dimes, 5 boards. Kalia Copper shot 3 for 15 and 1 for 6 from downtown. Very uncharacteristic for her, finishing with 7 points. That combination led to an 88-82 win for the Fever. After the game, Diana Taurasi gave Caitlin Clark her flowers, so it was nice to see someone speak nice of her in the league, actually. The very next night, the Mercury would host the Connecticut Sun. mentioned that one earlier as well, and I said how Phoenix was short-handed. They were without Diana Taurasi, who was suffering back stiffness, and Rebecca Allen, another back injury. And with those absences, the Mercury could never really get over that hump. The Sun would beat the Mercury 83-72. Phoenix dropped their second in the row. The big three, the Mercury, did all they could, but it wasn't enough. Griner scored a team-high 20 points. Copper bounced back with a 21-point, 6-rebound night. Natasha Cloud had a double-double of 18 points, 10 dimes, but the Mercury could have really used Taurasi in that game down the stretch. The Mercury heading to Dallas to end this two-game losing streak as they take on the Wings Wednesday, July 3rd. We leave the desert for La La Land. The Sparks have the 10th best record in the WNBA, sitting at 4-14. I mentioned how the Lynx hosted the Sparks earlier in the show. It was a close game that could have went either way. Sparks just had no answer for Nafisa Collier, she'd light it up for the Lynx late. Rookie Rakia Jackson led the Sparks in scoring with 19 points and 10 rebound double-double. Dearica Hamby also had a double-double with 16 points and 11 boards, but it was a tough loss for the Sparks there. They'd continue their road trip where they'd go into Atlanta to take on the Dream, and after Atlanta got off to a hot start, the Sparks came back and took the lead, where it was looking like it was a nice back and forth fourth quarter, but then the Dream took over and the Sparks faltered late, leading to the Dream beating the Sparks 87-74. So another tough outing for them. Dearica Hamby just missing out on a double-double. Ari McDonald had a big game off the bench. And the Sparks continued their lengthy road trip against the Sun. I mentioned how awesome the future looks for the Sparks. In that tough loss to the Dream, their rookies, Rakia Jackson and Cameron Brink, looked great, but the future took a bit of a hit against the Sun. Just 4 minutes into the game, a non-contact injury would happen to the number 2 overall pick in this year's draft, Cameron Brink. Right away, the injury looked bad. She needed help off the floor. It didn't look good. After the game, fears became a reality. A left torn ACL to the young star, a brutal injury. It takes out one of the most popular players in the WNBA for the rest of the season. It also takes Cameron Brink out of the Olympics as she was on the 3x3 USA team looking to defend their gold medal. A tough blow to Brink. She's already one of my favorite players to watch. I love referring to her as the Brink wall as she swatted shots away. So you hope she bounces back from that ACL injury. And I mentioned earlier in the show, Connecticut would take advantage of a team that was feeling it after seeing one of their own go down. Ari McDonald got the start. She played great in this one. She did have 6 turnovers, though. Fellow rookie Rakia Jackson scored 10 points, 7 boards. The only other Spark to reach double figures was Lee Yaru, who had 11 off the pine. And I mean, one positive is they do have someone like LaRue, the 25-year-old from China, is pretty fleet of foot at 6'7". But man, you got to miss Cameron Brink in this lineup. And like I said, she'll be missing the Olympics. And it was announced her teammate Dearica Hamby will replace her on the team. A great replacement for her, as you need someone of their stature to fill out that roster. The Sparks arrived in the Big Apple for 2 straight games with the New York Liberty. The game stayed pretty close in the first half, but the second came and the Liberty would run away with the game, beating the Sparks 93-80. McDonald continued her great individual play, leading the team in scoring with 15 points. Dearica Hamby had an unusual game for herself, not reaching double figures in points with 9 points. Still grabbing 11 boards, but the only other double digits for the Sparks came off the bench was Zia Cook, 13, and Ray Burrell at 11 points. A few days later, the Sparks would play the Liberty again in New York. This game was a little closer. The difference was really the second quarter. The Sparks were outscored 33-19 in the quarter, and that blew the game up a bit. The Sparks did fight to get in the game, but never looked too threatening to try to steal the win. Dearica Hamby bounced back from her lackluster game, scoring 20 points, 6 boards, and 5 dimes and 3 steals. Kia Nurse hit double digits. The Canadian hit 12 points in the game. Zia Cook off the bench again with 14 in just 17 minutes, so we may see more Zia Cook in the lineup going forward. I'm not sure, but it's tough with Cameron Brink out of the lineup, and we'll see how they fill that absence. The Sparks wrapped up their lengthy 7-game road trip with a game against the Phoenix Mercury. Sparks got out to a great start to the game. They seemed to catch the Mercury off guard, and Dearica Hamby had a huge game, going up against one of the best inside defenders in the league. Hamby would score a game-high 29 points while grabbing 7 boards. Unfortunately for her, though, she did not get much else offensive help. Rookie Rakia Jackson had 14.6 boards. Ari McDonald registered a double-double, 12 points, 10 dimes, while also getting 3 steals, but just not enough firepower to keep up with that Mercury team, and the Sparks fell 92-78. They had a few nights off, but they'll be hitting the court July 2nd today to play with the Washington Mystics. Dallas Wings sitting in the basement in the WNBA, who have a 4-15 record, sitting 12th in the league, which out of 12 teams is last. I mentioned they've been shorthanded or injury riddled. Anytime you use those to summarize a team, it's not usually good. But the show goes on, where the Wings hosted the Sun, and the game got ugly from the start. The Sun imposed their defensive will on the Wings. The Wings had no answer. Second-year player out of Villanova, Maddie Segrist, shared the team lead in scoring with McCowan, finishing with 16 points. I mean, McCowan played pretty well against a good Connecticut front court, registering that double-double. Arike Ogbongbowale struggled from the field, shooting 2 for 15, 1 for 6 from downtown, only finishing with 11 points. Very one-sided win for the Sun. Dallas would go on the road to take on the Minnesota Lynx, and they were already injury-ridden, and they'd be without Arike Ogbongbowale in that one, who was missing the game due to Achilles soreness. Despite that, the Wings stayed with the Lynx most of the game, but just fell apart in the fourth quarter. The Wings needed to go on a late run, but instead the Lynx increased their lead, where the Wings would lose again, falling 90-78. Maddie Segrist again shared the team high in scoring with 17 points, matched with the Turkish rookie Sevgi Uzun, who also had 17 points. Monique Billings flirted with a triple-double, finishing with 15 points, 10 boards, and 9 dimes. But the Wings were really just outmatched in that one. The Wings' road trip continued as they went to Chicago to take on the Sky. They did get Arike Ogbongbowale back, and Natasha Howard would come off the bench in her first game since the season opener. Maddie Segrist would miss the game due to an injury, and it was later announced that Maddie Segrist would undergo surgery on a broken left index finger, keeping her out until after the Olympic break. So you just get Howard back, and you just lose Segrist, and Jaylen Brown, who hasn't played since fracturing her nose in the first game. So like I said, a tough season for the Wings for just even staying on the floor. In the game against the Sky, the Wings lacked firepower as they lost 83-72. No lack of firepower from Ogbongbowale, though, as she finished with 31 points, but did not get much help elsewhere. Natasha Howard in her first game back off the bench had 13 points, but that was really it. The Wings would then play back-to-back games in the American capital as they took on the Mystics. Howard would get reinserted into the starting lineup, where she played well. It's one of the few things that played well for the Wings. She finished with 19 points and 6 rebounds. Number 4 overall pick in this year's past draft, J.C. Sheldon, put up 16 points. 5 boards and 3 dimes. Arike Ogbongbowale went cold again, shooting 3 for 11 from the field, including 0 for 6 for 3, finishing with 6 points on the night. Kalani Brown chipped in 13 off the bench, but it was a beatdown as the Mystics beat the Wings by 28. And in their rematch with the Mystics, the Wings played a lot better, including starting the game on fire and taking a lead after the first quarter. But from there, it was all Mystics, and they snatched the game. Natasha Howard had her best game of the season, 26 points and 8 rebounds. Ogbongbowale would have 23 points and 7 boards. Ohio State rookie Sheldon would again reach double figures. But the bench didn't contribute too much, and the Wings lost another game to the Mystics, putting their losing streak at 11. The Wings would then head home to face the newly crowned Commissioner Cup champion Minnesota Lynx. But as I mentioned earlier, the Wings caught the celebratory Lynx. The Wings caught the celebratory Lynx off guard, where Arike Ogbongbowale shot lights out, hitting some tough shots, making 23 points on 5 for 8 shooting from downtown, also kicking in 9 dimes and 4 boards. Natasha Howard had a brutal shooting night, scoring at 6 points on 2 for 13 shooting. Luckily, her fellow front court teammate Tara McCowan stepped up in a big way. The 6'7" center played big, scoring 17 points, grabbing 12 boards, and the bench really stepped up too. Odyssey Sims going for 18, and Mo Billings scoring 14 off the bench. All behind Ogbongbowale scoring. I'd been doing it well until then. The Wings won the game 94-88, ending their 11-game winning streak. Good for them to get back on the winning side. And as I mentioned earlier, the Wings would play back-to-back games on the road against the Storm. I mentioned the Wings jumped out early, but the Storm would storm back to win the game 97-76. Arike Ogbongbowale, there we go, led the team with 24 points, and Natasha Howard played better than her last game, scoring 12 points. but they didn't get much else for help. The second game against the Storm didn't fare much better. Agbongbowale leading the team with 21 points, but that was about it. Sims worked hard in her last game, worked her way into the starting lineup, where she did put up 12 points, 6 dimes, and 5 boards, but they lacked punch. Natasha Howard at 15.6 boards. McCowan struggled. Another tough loss for the Wings as they are back on a 2-game losing streak. They'll be looking to end that streak at home against the Phoenix Mercury Wednesday, July 3rd. And there you have it, a WNBA recap. It took a while to get here, but you're caught up. How's your team looking? We'll find out who's getting named to the WNBA All-Star Game today, July 2nd. And after looking at the first round of voting, it's clear to me Caitlin Clark's going to be making as a rookie. She's one of the most popular players in the league. Despite not being one of the best in the league right now, she will make this team, which will probably ruffle feathers. But I think it's deserved. She's one of the best passers in the game right now. And it'll be interesting to see who else gets announced to the team. There will always be snubs. There always are. But this year specifically, maybe some more players can sneak in there. Because being that it is the 2024 Olympic year, the All-Star Game format will feature WNBA All-Stars taking on the USA Olympic team. Should add some extra incentive, and I'm thinking it should make a good game. Like I said, those announcements are coming out later today, so keep your eyes and ears out for that. We'll have a quick look at the stats. Asia Wilson leading the league in scoring at 26.9 per game. Dallas's Arike Agbongbowale is behind her at 23.7. Mercury's Kalea Copper at 21.8. Minnesota's Nafisa Collier at 20.9. And Seattle's Jewel Lloyd rounds out the top 5 with 20.2. The top rebounder in the game right now, Chicago Sky rookie Angel Reese, leading the league with 11.4 per game on her current double-double streak. Asia Wilson right behind her at 11.1. Minnesota's Nafisa Collier at 10.4. The only other player to be in double digits is LA Sparks' De'Erica Hamby at 10.3. Looking at the best distributors in the game, Connecticut's Alyssa Thomas leads the league at 7.5. Just behind her is Phoenix's Natasha Cloud at 7.3. And then number 1 overall pick, Indiana's Caitlin Clark, third in assists with 6.9 per game. New York Liberty's Sabrina Ionescu just behind Clark at 6.5. And Seattle's Skylar Diggins-Smith rounds out the top 5 with 6.1. With Cameron Brink done for the season, you can't really count the Brink-Walls block per game average. So Asia Wilson leads the league at 2.3, just ahead of Seattle's Ezzy Magbegor at 2.2. Minnesota's Alana Smith just behind them at 2.1. Current steal leaders, Dallas's Arike Agbongbowale at 2.8. Minnesota's Collier just behind her at 2.3. Brianna Stewart just behind her at 2.2, and Asia Wilson's tied with Nneka Ogwumike at 1.9 per game. So with a look at the team recaps, individual stat leaders, I must say, Las Vegas Aces Asia Wilson has to be the front runner for the MVP. And I'm not trying to sound like a broken record here, but she's got to be the favorite for Defensive Player of the Year as well, right? So she's just killing it out there. And I know the Aces have lost just as many times now as they did all of last year, but I think Gray is part of the reason that team goes, and you can't blame Wilson for any of those losses. She's been balling. Rookie of the Year could be tough with this class, but right now, I'd say Angel Reese is leading that category. I mean, she's leading the league in rebounding and is already the best offensive rebounder in the league. Pretty impressive for the LSU rookie, but there is plenty of season to be played. Most improved player, I know she's been in the league a bit, but I think De'Erica Hamby of the Sparks. Like I said, I know she's been a vet, and she has had double-digit scoring seasons in the past, but she's currently 9th in the league in scoring, 2nd in the league in rebounding, coming off a season where she averages 8.9 points per game and 5.9 rebounds per game. So you can hear my case here. If not Hamby, I'd give it to maybe Kennedy Carter of the Chicago Sky. She's turned it up, working her way from a bench player into the starting lineup. And if this season continues to trend in the direction it's going, I'd say Cheryl Reeve of the Minnesota Lynx has to be the front runner for Coach of the Year. Lots of season to be played, though. The All-Star Game on the horizon with the announcements coming out today and a break for the Summer Olympics in Paris. Lots of excitement in women's hoops. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode and are all caught up in the WNBA action. And if you didn't know a bit about the WNBA, hopefully you learned a few things. My regular podcast, Sports and Shorts of Sorts, will be out tomorrow, and I'm hoping to finally drop that NBA episode with the free agency signings, the trades, everything's bonkers in the NBA. But thanks for tuning in for the WNBA. Let's keep growing this game. Happy Canada Day, and for the people in the States, happy Independence Day coming up. And thanks for tuning in. Ren City out.